Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's webinar from Anika Digital. My name is Darren. I'm MD at Anika Digital, so I'm going to be the host this morning. This week, we're joined by Lauren. Lauren, do you want to say hello?
Hello, yeah. So I'm a digital PR and content account manager at Anika. So that includes doing lots of PR, comms, social, and then also influencer, which is why we're here this morning.
Awesome. And I've had a look through the slides. It's a great presentation, loads of really interesting pieces of information in here, so it should be a really good one. Before we start, I'm just going to do a couple of polls. So the poll should come up on your screen shortly. The first poll is, what's the main reason for joining today's session? Do you want to learn the basics? I'm considering influencer marketing for my brand. I'm supporting a colleague, client who's interested, or just curious. Just let a few more roll in.
I can't see the results, Darren, so you might have to let me know what the percentages
That's all
are.
right. I can tell you, yeah. So we have at the moment it looking like, so we've got 18% for want to learn the basics. That's moved up to 20%. 33% I'm considering influencer marketing for my brand. So that's the top answer at the moment. We've got 12% I'm supporting a colleague or client who's interested, and 35% just curious.
Cool. There's a few people that can't see the polls. I'm seeing that pop up in the chat.
Oh, okay. Let's
Maybe
try
we'll
the
see
next
if
one.
the next one works.
It might be something to do with pop-ups and in the browser. We'll see how this one goes.
Potentially.
The next one should be on screens now. Have you ever worked with an influencer before? Yes or no? Click on the polls tab. Michael says, "Oh, that might be the answer." They should pop up, but make sure I find it now. So we've got 47% for yes and 53% for no. So even split.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Cool. And the last poll should be on the screen now. How confident do you feel in understanding what influencer marketing is? Very confident, somewhat confident, or not confident at all? And it looks like we've got 10% very confident, 70% somewhat confident, 20% not confident at all. So most people sitting within that somewhat confident to not confident at all bracket. So
Cool.
it should be a lot to learn today. If you weren't able to see the polls, it's not a massive. It's just to sort of get a general consensus of where everyone's at. So that will help us today, but no big deal if you weren't able to see those. Right, do you want to share your presentation?
Yeah.
If you would like the handout for today, I've put it in the handouts section. I believe it's again top right, so you should be able to download the slides. If you have any questions, do add them into the chat, or you can use the Q&A function. I'll monitor both. If there's anything I can answer, I will try to. Some I will answer, and then I'll also, if we've got time, ask Lauren at the end. And if there's any I can't answer, we'll just ask those in the Q&A at the end. Awesome. Right, I'm going to turn your camera off, Lauren.
Thank you.
My camera off, and over to you.
Great.
Sorry, Lauren, you're going to have to turn. Okay, you've done it.
I've done it.
All right.
Okay, so thanks everyone for joining this morning. So as you can see, this will be an introduction to influencer marketing. So it will be a very beginner-friendly guide to help you understand how you can utilize influencer marketing in your marketing sort of tactics. So a little bit about me. As I said, I'm a digital PR and content account manager at Annika. I've got around 8 years or so experience working in marketing agencies on a wide range of different clients and industries. And one of my things is I love streamlining processes and finding harmony between different marketing channels. And in this case, this includes finding good relationships between brands and influencers. So this is our agenda. This is what we'll be covering today. So what is influencer marketing and why it matters? Why you should use influencer marketing, understanding the different tiers of influencers, finding the right influencer fit for your brand, key metrics of what to track and things to look out for and to avoid, a few little tips and tricks on how to run a successful influencer campaign, and then at the end, we'll just do a little conclusion and recap to sum up what we've just covered. So starting off with, what is influencer marketing and why is it important? So influencer marketing involves the collaboration between a business or a brand and an individual that has a dedicated social media following, which is what gets them that influencer status. These kinds of collaborations can involve promoting products or sometimes services as well, and leveraging that dedicated audience and the trust that the influencer has built with their audience to help to drive brand awareness and hopefully sales. So it's a really, really good thing for e-commerce businesses that are selling products that want to kind of increase their sales and also drive brand awareness at the same time. So how does it work? Essentially, brands will partner with an influencer to promote their products and or services. Once that partnership has been set up, the influencers will then go ahead and create content. And this could be posts, so for example, an Instagram post, or it could be videos such as Reels or YouTube videos, stories shared on their different social media channels, etc. So there's lots of different ways that they can create content for your brand. And the key here is that it will integrate the brand in a natural and very authentic way. This content is then shared with the influencer's followers, which, as I mentioned previously, will drive that brand awareness and prompt people to take action with the business. Key platforms these days include Instagram and TikTok. They're kind of the two biggies, but it can also cross obviously into YouTube, sometimes Twitter and Facebook, LinkedIn as well if you're B2B, and then blogs, which I think is what a lot of people remember influencer marketing to be, like the bloggers and stuff, but it's very much more like key channels these days are Instagram, TikTok and YouTube. So before we jump into sort of the nitty-gritty of the presentation and start diving into these tips and tricks, let's just have a look at the sort of influencer market. So actually, the UK influencer sector reached 1.45 billion in 2023, which really just shows how much it's grown and become, a lot more popular with marketers and businesses over the years. It's also meant to increase, the ad spend is meant to increase to 1.31 billion this year. And then 64% of UK marketers have actually increased their budgets for influencer marketing in the last 12 months alone. So this just really shows, how popular it is and how much of a good sort of, channel platform that this is for businesses. So with that being said, why should you use it? There's a few different reasons why. First up is shifting consumer trust. So 54% of UK respondents in a survey said that they're actually more likely to trust an influencer's sponsored post over one from an A-list celebrity. And we will get into this later when we look at the different influencer tiers and explain why that might be. But influencers are generally perceived as more relatable and authentic compared to traditional, mega influencers and celebrities. So on the theme of authenticity, it's also reliability. So 55%, so over halfway, just over half of social media users actually prefer content created by influencers over marketing professionals. So this could be, for example, say Boots was to partner with an influencer. The influencer's content might resonate more with the audience than Boots just posting on their own platforms. Influencer content often feels more genuine, so that leads to higher engagement and trust with an audience. Return on investment and conversion rates. So people are more likely to buy, click, interact when an influencer they trust promotes a product. And again, we'll get into more of this later when we look at the tiers and about dedicated audiences and things like that. Many brands will tend to see improved awareness, engagement, and sales when they partner with influencers for collaborations. Niche targeting. So influencers tend to have really specific audiences, and they will operate in a specific niche. So for example, I've put here, it could be fashion, fitness, pets, parents, it could be interiors and lifestyle, it could be cooking. There's lots of different categories that influencers will, specialize in, which means they have a very niche, targeted, dedicated audience that they are communicating to, which then that means your brand can then speak directly to your ideal customer. So instead of just sending out like a blanket statement that goes across everyone, if you were to partner with an influencer that specializes in what your brand provides, so for example, if you sell furniture and homeware and you partner with an influencer that has a feed that's all about interiors or they're redoing their home, they should have a really dedicated following, which you can then speak directly to. And then that means it's actually more cost effective than broader reach advertising. So there's lots of different benefits there, lots of different reasons why you should consider working with an influencer. So let's have a little look at the different influencer tiers and understanding a bit more about them. So I've broken it down into this table, and these are kind of just general numbers. It might change around, but as a general rule of thumb, this is what we're looking at. So there's lots of different types of influencers. For example, nano influencers, they would have about 10K or under followers. And then micro is 10K to 50K. Mid-tier influencers have 50K to 100K. Macro is 500K to 1 million. And then your mega and celebrity influencers have 1 million plus. So each tier has their own different advantages and benefits that entirely depends on your campaign, your goals, and what your budget is. But on the topic of budget, it is incredibly rare for influencers to publish and share their fees online. So what you have to do to figure out if an influencer will fit within your campaign budget is to contact them, or in some cases, their management company, to find out if they will have fees and if they will charge you and how much they are. Many influencers often agree to collab on a purely gifted basis. Now, this is typically more common with your nano and your micro. It's not always guaranteed, but out of all the tiers, they're the ones that are sort of easier to negotiate with, to say, if we gift you a product, will you collab? And they would sometimes agree to say, yeah, we can do that with no fees. So it's all about reaching out, communicating, negotiating, and relationship building with those influencers. And we're going to dive in a bit more now to kind of break it down and look at the pros and cons of each influencer tier. So for nano influencers, the pros, they've got high engagement rates because they've got a really personal connection with their followers. So it's like I was saying earlier, they've got a dedicated following because they have their niche and they can more personally connect with their audience. They tend to have low cost fees or often product only partnerships as well. So if you're on a budget, if you're just dabbling into the world of influencer marketing, this could be a good place to start. But it's important to keep in mind that obviously with a small influencer, they will have a more limited reach. And sometimes they might have less experience with brand deals. So it might be that if you were to work with a nano influencer, you just need to make sure that you give them a really, really good brief to make sure they're delivering what it is that you need from the campaign. And as a recommendation, they can be best for sort of local or community-based campaigns. This doesn't say you have to use them for that. It's just a recommendation of what they could be best used for. Next up, we've got the micro influencers, and this is my favorite tier of influencers, just to let you know. They've got a really strong and niche focus. They've always got really high engagement. Well, not always, but typically they've got high engagement and trust, and they can be affordable and easy to manage. So the thing that I like about micro influencers, and I'll talk about this more later when we discuss engagement rates, is that because they've got a decent following, but they're not so unattainable and unapproachable as like celebrities, they've got a really, really great interaction with their audience. So there's this lady on the side at the example, her name's Kelly. I've worked with her before. Her focus is interiors and homeware. And all of her audience love interiors and homeware. And she will often reply to comments or like comments and engage with her audience, which then just gets even more engagement, for the content that's being promoted. And because of past experience with other brand deals, micro influencers tend to have a slightly stronger idea of what it needs, what they need to do to send out good content and, the specifics of working with a brand. A slight con of micro influencers, again, is that they don't have that very large scale audience. So micro influencers are good for niche brands looking for quality over quantity. Next up, we've got our mid-tier. So, they're slightly up now in terms of following than our micro, but not as big as the mega macro influencers. So they tend to have a good balance between reach and engagement. So they can reach a slightly wider audience without losing too much engagement. They tend to have slightly more polished content. It might be that when we start to get to mid-tier, they are doing this perhaps as a full-time thing, whereas nano and micro might do that on the side of a normal day job. And they will often tend to have a clear niche as well. But as we start to work our way up the tiers, we then need to start to consider that they would have a higher cost. So a mid-tier influencer would typically have higher fees than a micro. And that's because it's based on their reach and their followers. So it's safe to assume the higher amount of followers that they have, the higher their fees are going to be. And then there's also things to consider that they might start to lose that more personal interaction with their followers. So they might have the wider reach, but they might not necessarily connect on a more personal level, which means mid-size brands should consider working with mid-tier influencers needing sort of more moderate reach. Then we get to our macro. So the macro influencers have a large reach and they've got really nice high quality content production because they're doing this all the time. They, collab with lots of different brands. They might have invested in nice cameras as well. And they're used to making an aesthetic feed. So their content will always look really, really nice. Another pro is that they're very media friendly and experienced. So it's safe to assume that macro influencers have partnered with different brands before, and they have quite a confident voice because they're on their platform quite a lot. So if you ever wanted them to do a live, for example, or a story of them talking through something, it's safe to assume that they would be more confident to do that and slightly more media trained and experienced than some of the lower tiers of influencers. But again, you're kind of seeing a pattern here with the cons. They will be more expensive and engagement could sometimes be slightly lower. So if you're looking at macro influencers, you'll need to reach out to them or their management to figure out what their fees are to make sure that you can afford that within your marketing budget that you've set aside for influencer collaborations. Typically, macro influencers are sort of best used for bigger campaigns or really generating, those brand awareness boosts. And then finally, we come to our mega and celebrity influencers. So as you can probably imagine, they've got massive exposure. They can reach, thousands, millions of different people. And they've got really good association with a well-known name. But then their cons are, they can be very, very costly. Sometimes they might lose some of that engagement because their audience aren't as connected to them on a personal level. And they might have less authenticity or connection with followers. And it's worth keeping in mind as well that it's also more common for mega and celebrity influencers to have more bots and fake followers. And they could be at risk of lots of spammy comments because typically their profiles are open to the public. They're not on private. So they could be at risk of that. But the mega and celebrity influencers are, better for bigger brands with a bigger, healthier budget and looking for, mass visibility. So hopefully that helped understanding the different tiers. Let's have a look now at how you can find the right influencer fit for your brand. So when you're considering working with an influencer, there's a few things that you need to consider. For example, let's have a look at why it's important to get a good fit for your brand. So the influencer choice should align with your brand values, tone, and message. You want the connection to seem more genuine and authentic and not for it to be so obviously they've been paid to feature this product. A misaligned influencer can cause backlash or confusion. So, off the top of my head, let's say that there's an influencer that specializes in beauty and they feature makeup and beauty products on their page. And then they're suddenly promoting, a new gaming laptop. That's not in their niche. That partnership doesn't feel authentic. And then their audience could be confused. Why is she promoting this? This is not the content we're used to. So make sure you're looking at the niches that they have and does that tie in with what you're looking to promote for your business? So talking about content style and niche, you should think, does their content resonate with your aesthetic and tone? So let's say your business is, your branding style is all pastels and light colors, and it could be, quite feminine on that sort of beauty theme. Would an influencer that has a very dark and gothic, aesthetic to their feed align with your brand? Probably not. So have a look at how their feed looks and their aesthetic and how they talk about things, and does that match up with your brand? Are they creating content that's relevant to your product? So that's like what I mentioned earlier with a beauty influencer wouldn't really create content that would be for like a gaming laptop, for example. Make sure you're choosing influencers who organically align with your brand's story. So this is all about creating really authentic and genuine connections. So then the content that's consumed by the audience just feels a bit more natural, and it's not so much in your face as, this is a paid partnership. Platform fit. So we mentioned earlier at the start that there's different platforms that influencers are on, but not all influencers perform equally across platforms. So for example, there might be an influencer that performs really, really well on Instagram, but actually not so good on TikTok. So make sure you're looking into their pages to see, how many likes and comments they're getting, and make sure you're picking the right platform. Typically, younger audiences tend to be on TikTok. So if your brand wants to reach younger audiences, consider influencers on TikTok. If you're a very visual brand, obviously Instagram or YouTube are really, really good for that, because you can have, lovely stills on the grid, or you can have reels. There's lots of different options there. And also B2B, you can also work with influencers on LinkedIn as well. But the key here is really just knowing where your customers are spending their time. Always keep that in mind. Influencer reputation, another very important one. When you're starting to review a pool of influencers to consider who you want to work with, have a look at their tone, their professionalism, and any past partnerships that they've done. Also check for any red flags, any controversies, fake reviews, any offensive content. And this is really important because if an influencer has been involved in a controversy or they have quite offensive content, and then you partner with them, you're almost then associated with that. So make sure that you're doing your homework and your background checks and make sure that they're not involved in anything that could negatively reflect on your brand via the partnership. And that leads us on to how trustworthiness is critical. This is your brand reputation here. You want to work with someone that's going to positively boost your brand reputation and not, risk giving you a bad one. Audience demographics. So kind of like how we said, where you need to see where your audience and your consumers are spending their time. You also need to have a look at different demographics. So often when we're looking at working with influencers, people focus just on the influencer themselves stats, but actually have a little look to see who follows the influencer. Are their followers aligned with your target audiences? Consider age, gender, location, and interests. Again, all of these should match your target audience. And there are some tools and different platforms on offer that can help to offer more detailed breakdowns of this. And I do have some tools on the slide that I can show you to give you an idea of what you can use. Past performance and case studies, again, really important. So ask for metrics from previous collaborations, and a good influencer will always be happy to share case studies or stats when asked. So say you've had a list of 50 influencers and you've got it down to 5. Who are we going to work with? Reach out to them, find out what stats they've got, find out what previous successes they've had. This can be really, really helpful to help you choose the right influencer for your campaign. Because it might be one of them looks great on, face value, but if you were to compare their case studies or their stats with another one, they might not be as good. So always reach out. They normally have little packs that they can share of any stats that they've got from previous collaborations for you to review. And just look out for that real evidence of engagement and return on investment. So now we're going to move on to some key metrics and some things to look out for and what to avoid. So some key metrics to track here. If you're very, very new to influencer marketing and you don't know where to start, what should I track? What can I report back on? This is your go-to. So engagement rate. So this includes your likes, your comments, and your shares. Reach. How many people saw the content that the influencer shared? Impressions. How many views did they have? How many views did their Instagram reel get? How many views did their story get? Click-through rate. So this could be link clicks. Let's say they did a story where they linked to your product in their story. How many clicks is that link getting? And then conversion rate. Any sales or signups from a campaign. And a good trick here for the tracking the conversion rate is when you work with an influencer, specifically if it's like an e-commerce site that sells, let's say, homeware, it's a good example, furniture. When you work with an influencer, consider giving them a unique influencer discount code, because that means when users have seen that code and they go to your website and they enter that code into, the promotion box at checkout, it makes it so much easier for you to allocate sales to your influencer campaign, and it makes it a lot easier to track. So, when I've worked with influencers for a brand before, we would be saying, Kelly, her influencer discount code would be Kelly10, and it gets you a 10% discount on storage items, so like drawers, etc. Makes it so much easier to attribute the sales that you've received to your influencer campaign. So it's really good for reporting. So I've mentioned this previously about the engagement rate. Why is engagement rate better than the follower count? So an account can have a huge following, millions of followers, but ultimately it's useless if no one's interacting with them. It's the engagement that the influencer gets through their content that's the real influence here. And the higher the engagement, the more trust and the better return on investment you can get from the collaboration. So I've got an example here. Sorry to this influencer, I've picked on them a little bit. But as you can see, they've got 1.4 million followers and they're a verified account as well. So on face value, you'd think, oh, wow, you know, they're going to reach so many people. They've got so many followers. But actually, their engagement rate is really, really low, really, really low. So the high following, we call that like a vanity metric, right? So looks good on face value. Yeah, I've got loads of followers. I'm verified. But actually, if you do a deeper dive, their engagement rate isn't good. So you would want to avoid working with influencers with a really low engagement rate, because ultimately you're not going to get anything out of it. And you might pay them a high fee to work with them, but you might not get any return at all. So always look for higher engagement rate over just follower count alone. So spotting fake followers, there's a few ways you can do this. There's things, you know, you can do it sort of manually, and there are tools as well. So say you're considering working with an influencer, check out if they've had a sudden spike in followers. That can be suspicious. That could mean that they've bought followers, or they've got lots of bots and fake followers. Lots of spammy comments as well. So let's say that they're having hundreds of comments from lots of different random accounts that aren't really addressing the content that they've posted. That's a sign of spammy, bot, fake accounts that are interacting with the influencer. And then that poor engagement as well that I've sort of mentioned, you know, they might have a high following, but their engagement rate, not very good. And there's a few tools that you can use. So for example, Hype Auditor is free. So if you can see the screenshot on the top right, where I've picked on that same influencer again, because they're a good example, you can make an account with Hype Auditor for free and pop in the link to their account. So for example, I've linked to their Instagram, and it can give you a very top level view of their account quality score. So that can be really, really helpful. And as you can see, Charlie's is very low. And then the screenshot on the bottom, the followers credibility, that's from a tool that we use at Annika called Brandwatch. And that is a paid for one. But that can show you the credibility of the followers as well. So, you know, with a score of 32.68%, the followers of Charlie are probably spammy, botty, fake accounts. So really, really interesting stats, really helps you to, you know, pick some good influencers. Quality over quantity. So I've said about my love for the micro tier. One micro influencer with a super loyal, engaged, targeted audience could actually completely outperform a celebrity with millions of followers because they have that connection and they have that engagement. So choose influencers that you can see have a genuine influence with their audience, and don't be fooled by the vanity metrics, such as the millions of followers, because it might not always work out the way that you'd hoped. So there's some different tools here that you can use to vet influencers. So I've just listed a few. Hype Auditor, like I say, you can use for free to kind of get a top level overview. There's Upfluence, Modash, Creator IQ, Aspire, Tracker, etc. So all of these tools can be used to research influencers. So this can help you to figure out, you know, what's their engagement rate? What's their percentage of fake followers? What's their credibility of their followers? You can use these tools to get insights into their average likes, average reel plays, etc. So there's lots of different stats that you can get, and these platforms will pull that all in for you. So how can you run a successful influencer campaign with everything that I've just said in mind? Let's have a little look at what you need to consider. So first off, your briefs, your goals, and your KPIs. Make sure that you're setting really clear campaign goals. What is it that you want to achieve from your influencer collaboration? Is it just brand awareness? Do you want to be driving more traffic to your website? Do you want to increase your product sales? Or do you want to grow a community? So make sure you're picking a really, really clear goal, because that will make it much easier for you to track as well. Create a strong brief. So this is something that I tend to do as well when working with influencers is, okay, we've got the goals and we've got the campaign. We want to make sure that the content that the influencers are creating ties in with that campaign. So you need to think about the campaign message and tone of voice. Are there any key phrases? Are there any key messages that they need to push, such as free next day delivery or 10% off? You need to specify the deliverables. So what do you want the influencer to deliver? For example, do you want just posts? Do you want stories? Do you want videos? Make sure you're also covering the do's and the don'ts. For example, make sure that you're talking about brand guidelines, like we would never use this type of wording, or make sure that you're not wearing anything branded from another business when promoting our product. And then cover any legal requirements as well. And always include a little section at the bottom of like briefs or contracts where they can sign that. And then also specify your timelines and deadlines. It might be that your campaign is running for a month. There might be a special offer on a range that you're running. So you would want to make sure that the influencer is posting in time with, your campaign deadlines. And then define your success metrics, so your KPIs, engagement rate, reach and impressions, click-throughs and conversions, and follower growth. Next up is your influencer outreach and relationship building. So there's a few tips here on how you can approach influencers professionally. First up, personalize your outreach. So I've put here reference their content. So it would be, you would message them, hello, first name, address them by their first name. So it doesn't just feel like a mass, distributed message to hundreds of influencers. Make them feel like they've been chosen for a reason. And within your outreach message, you could say, we've seen your feed. We really love your aesthetic. We can see that you've previously featured posts related to XYZ. So it shows that you've taken the time to look through their profile and you're understanding why they would be relevant to work with your brand. Be clear on what you're offering and expecting. So it could be that you're saying, we're running this campaign. We'd love to gift you a furniture item to promote on your Instagram. And then that's where discussions around fees, partnerships, etc. will start to come into play. And then this is a really important one, is highlighting the mutual value of the connection. So obviously, that it's going to be good for you because it's going to get you brand awareness, etc. But what's in it for them other than, potentially getting a free product? But why is the partnership harmonious for the both of you? And it might be that you can say, your followers can get exclusive access to something. They can get your discount code. Make sure you pop that in there as well. So once you've outreached to your influencers, you've maybe got some on board, you always need to think about building those long-term relationships. So working with creators who genuinely align to your brand means actually that they might work with you again because they've had a good experience. Their audience was engaged with the content. Repeat collaborations equals more authenticity and trust. And also it's worth keeping in mind, and this is something that I've seen with my experience working with influencers, is if you work with them on multiple campaigns, they might chuck in some freebies for you. You know, they might have said, oh, I'll charge you £250 for a reel. But then the next time you collaborate with them, they might say, oh, well, I'll throw in 5 stories for free, because they've got that relationship, that you've got a positive relationship, you've worked with them before. They might be more likely to maybe give you a discount or give you more content for no extra cost. And then as well, their audience, seeing them continuously working with you, actually helps to give you more authenticity and trust within your target audience as well. And finally, if you want to really make sure, let's say you found an influencer that you really, really like working with, they've got you great results before, you want to keep working with them, and try and involve them in some creative direction. So I know I've spoken about the importance of briefs, and it is very important, but let's say they say, oh, you know, have we considered this or that, or I would suggest posting at this time. Get involved with them a little bit. Let them, you know, because they might be doing this a lot and they know their audience very well. Have a bit of back and forth. Let them get involved with some of the creative direction as well. Because it's, you know, it's all about a collaboration at the end of the day. And this can help to generate more authentic content. So on to campaign execution and optimization. So you've got your influencer on board, they've got their brief, we're good to go. So launch with clarity. Make sure you've got those contracts signed and saved, you know, securely. Confirm content is approved before publishing. So you can specify to influencers, please send us your content before it goes live so we can check it and approve it before it goes out. And then make sure that you're continuously tracking posts as they go live to make sure they're performing well. Monitor performance in real time. So you can use analytics tools or creator-provided insights to keep track of how the content's going. So let's say you don't have access to any analytics tools to track the, you know, ongoing success of the campaign. Reach out to your influencer. They can provide you with their insights straight from their page. And if it's a good influencer, you know, they'd be more than happy to do that to keep you up to date. Also look out for any trends in high performing content as well. So it might be, we can see that her reel's performing really, really well in comparison to just the static grid post. We'll keep that in mind for any campaigns moving forward. Maybe we'll just make sure that she does reels in the future if we work with her again. Which leads us on to then optimizing campaigns for the future. So double down on what worked. For example, was it the format? Was it actually the creator themselves? Was it the messaging that you're using in your campaign? And then with that, you can then look to tweak maybe what didn't work. For example, you know, was this the right platform for us? Was the content style okay? You can then start to think about campaigns going forwards and what you might want to change to get better results. And then always collect any sort of testimonials and case studies for any future use, because that can be really useful for you to promote on your website, or when you're reaching out to other influencers as well, you could use that too. So there's a few helpful tips and tricks there for running your first influencer campaign. So let's do a little bit of a recap of what we've just covered in today's session. So we've got our influencer types. Nano influencers, great for local and community campaigns. Micro influencers have high trust with niche targeting. Mid-tier influencers tend to have a more balanced reach and engagement. Macro influencers are great for awareness and reach. And then your mega and celebrity influencers are better for mass campaigns where you really want to make a big PR splash for your business. Success factors. Choosing the right influencer for your goals. Prioritizing engagement over follow count, so like we discussed, those vanity metrics. Monitoring results with clear KPIs, and focus on authentic, value-led partnerships. And a quick little recap for getting started: make sure you've defined your goals, you've clearly identified your target audience, you've chosen the right platforms to make sure you're reaching where your audience is spending their time, find influencers that fit both your brand and your budget, and set clear briefs and measure outcomes. And that's that. That's everything. That is a very beginner's friendly guide to using and understanding influencer marketing for your business.
Thank you, Lauren. That was awesome.
Nice.
Just trying to find a space. I've been moving from pillar to post while you've been talking. That was really good. Now, with a good presentation, an awesome presentation like that, comes a lot of questions. So we have a few.
Okay.
Unfortunately, this is an area that I start to struggle with because I don't have the experience that you've got. So I haven't been able to answer many of them. So we'll go through a couple if that's all right.
Okay.
I'll go from the top. So for micro influencers, what's the general expectation of amount type of content they should be expected to produce for gifted products ranging from the 80 to £300?
Interesting question. And I know that this is going to be slightly frustratingly vague, but every single influencer is different. So there's lots of influencers within the micro tier, but they all have different, outcomes. So I couldn't confidently tell you exactly or what the general expectation is, because it all depends on your negotiations and your briefs. So that's something that you would need to kind of hash out with the influencer. So, for example, I've worked with micro influencers that have roughly charged in around that kind of price range. Some might just do a reel, but some might do a post with 3 stories. It completely depends on the influencer themselves, what they're happy to produce, and what your brief is. So that's why the negotiations and the relationship building is really important.
Totally. I guess it's a negotiation once you start talking to the influencer around what's best for the brand, what the influencer can produce, all of these different stuff, and then you start to negotiate on what that's going to cost. Awesome. What's a good way of finding influencers? Asks Shannon. Our products are quite niche. We sell home office products as well as items like doormats, and we don't know how to go about finding the correct sort of influence to help promote those products.
Okay, interesting question. So there's probably 2 ways you could do this, and I'm trying to think about ways where you can use a platform or do it manually, because I want to make it as accessible to different people as possible. So let's just say you've got access to an influencer platform. You can kind of go through the filtering and choose keywords and niches and categories and filter your search results. So hopefully the influencers that come up in the list are more relevant to what you're looking with relating to your brand. If you're doing it on a more manual way, you don't have access to a platform, specifically in your instance, so it's like office products. Are there any influencers that talk about working from home? Come with me to redo my home office, for example. Check out any content that they're posting that seems relevant. And it might be a bit of a manual task. It might take a bit of time to kind of go through. Sometimes it can take a lot of scrolling and exploring. Trust me, I've been there, to try and make sure you're finding influencers that are relevant to you and your brand and your niche. But certainly, I'd say for your niche, actually, there's probably so many different influencers out there that would be great for office products, because a lot of them, especially ones where they're doing this full time as their career, they'll probably have a home office, or it could be entrepreneurial influencers, for example, ones that help people with startups. It could be influencers that work in investments. There's all different ways. It's just using keywords and hashtags to try and find them on the platform that you want to work with them on. Hopefully that helps.
Perfect. Thank you. Kevin would like to know have you got any guidance for when influencers proactively approach brands seeking a partnership in exchange for incentives or freebies?
Yeah, so this is something one of the clients that I work with, after their first influencer campaign, they actually then had an influx of all these other different influencers saying, we want to work with you. Are you open to more collaborations? So the way that you would handle that is, let's say your campaign's closed, you could work with them on an ad hoc basis, or you could say, thank you so much for reaching out. We will consider you for our next campaign. Then let's say the next campaign rolls around. You could really just talk to them in the same way that you would if you're reaching out to an influencer for the first time. So go to them with, this is our campaign. This is what we want to be promoting. So for example, my client has just done the great big spring refresh where they're promoting storage solutions for the home that are aesthetic but functional. So you would go to the influencer with that and say, yeah, we're more than happy to work with you and you can be gifted something from a gifting catalog. And that's another thing as well, based on like the gifting thing and the incentives and freebies. If you have a gifting catalog, it's more, they don't have free reign to pick what they want. You can actually pick what goes into that gifting catalog because that ties in with your campaign and what you want to be promoting. And then they can pick a product from there. So they've kind of got the idea of, I've got free will to pick, but actually it's slightly more weighted because you've presented them with specific things to choose from. But yeah, you just continue to chat to them as normal. This is the campaign. This is what we want to achieve. This is our gifting booklet. If you're happy, let us know and we can look to take it further from there. So hopefully that helps with that one.
Awesome. We're getting more and more questions coming through.
Oh gosh.
Patrick asks, if just looking online to find influencers, i.e. not having a platform, how do I spot an influencer versus them just being a popular site? I don't want to approach someone who is not an influencer and potentially upset them.
Okay. I suppose that would just be a case of looking through the content that they're posting. Good way to see that is, do they have stories where it's like them talking? Or, does their feed include things like past partnerships? Have they collaborated with people before? I don't think you'd necessarily upset someone if you said, I'd like to work with you. If it was like, for example, a competing business, you wouldn't want to do that, but hopefully that will be obvious in the types of content that they're posting and how their feed looks, and things that they're talking about. I would say that influencers are pretty easy to spot. Sometimes they'll have the verification symbol as well. Their profile picture will be of them, or they might have a nice designed graphic with their handle on. Check their bios as well, because sometimes they'll say open to collaborations or email this for collabs. So there'll be lots of different telltale signs that would show you that A, they're an influencer, and B, they're open for collaborating with.
Perfect. We've got a lot of questions, but I'm only going to ask one more because we're running out of time. What I would say is Lauren is at the moment heading up our influencer channel at Annika Digital. And I think if there are any questions that you've got which haven't been answered today, or you want more advice, or you'd like to talk to us about helping you run an influencer campaign, do reach out to Lauren, and we'll be able to help you that way. What does a brand need to consider when working with an influencer on TikTok and for a TikTok video?
Okay, so a few things to think about there. Obviously, kind of the more obvious things, such as how many engagements are they getting? How many likes and comments do they get on their videos? Obviously, you do need to consider their follower count as well. Just don't focus on that in isolation. Consider their engagement rate as well. Think about the quality of their videos. Are they posting high quality videos? If it's, poor quality, badly edited, blurry, maybe not the best. But if it's, snappy, clear, high quality content, then they would obviously be more favorable than someone that doesn't produce nicer content. Check out their comments as well. see the types of people that are interacting with them, to see if their audience resonates with who you're wanting to reach out to via your brand. And then obviously as well, because it's a video for TikTok, like consider the briefs as well that we spoke about. If there's something really specific you want them to produce, give them a brief as well. Hopefully that will help them to create content that you want them to create. But yeah, look at their followers, their engagements, the quality of the videos they're posting, how often or how few posts they have as well. If they're nice and really active, that shows they're on their account, they're active, they're taking care of their TikTok presence. If they post one video every couple of months, maybe not the best. So lots of different things to consider there for TikTok influencers.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for today, Lauren. That was awesome. And the questions were awesome as well. You got a lot of love on the emojis at the bottom coming through. So it's really, really good. Some people are asking how to contact you. So I'm just going to leave your email address in chat now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people can get in touch that way. Thank you all for attending. If you have just 1 minute of your time, we do ask people to leave a review if you enjoyed today's session. I'm just struggling with technology. Here we go. I know people do enjoy these webinars, but what people don't often see is the amount of effort that people put in behind the scenes to produce the slides and practice and host the thing. So leaving a review is just super helpful for us. It just gets that message out to more people. So that should pop up for you now. And the only other one I'll leave you with is we have a conference. Now we have a conference on the I've got to get the right date. 11th of June. That is in Leicester. It's at the Space Centre. So tickets are available now. If you want to come spend the day with us and all of our team that you've seen on all of these webinars, we'll have talks from loads of different individuals in lots of different fields. It's a single track day, so you don't need to pick and choose between which lane to go through. We're just going to go all learn together, have lots of time to break out and talk about technology and marketing and network and all of this other stuff. And there will be food and lunch and all sorts as well. So that ticket is available now. You can find that on that link. So that just leaves me to say thank you very much, Lauren. Genuinely, I think it was awesome today. So congratulations. And that's it. Hopefully I wasn't too noisy. I'm in a conference trying to find quiet spots, but it's very difficult when everyone's
You're okay.
working around me. Have a lovely weekend, everyone, and we will see you next week.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you for joining. Hopefully it was nice and useful for you, and have a good rest of your Friday.
Brilliant.